Hello and welcome to Chicanime. My name is Lauren, and today I'm going to be looking at an Annie News video, not an Overlord one. I do know I have to go back to the Overlord cut content videos soon, but this time I'm going to do the solo leveling cut content. So what did the anime change? We're just looking at episode 1 today. I like to get some backstory, and again, everyone on Patreon has been incredibly awesome about letting me know like specifics and like telling me backstory and extra tidbits, and I so appreciate that, and continue to do that, pretty please. But I'm looking forward to seeing what else I have missed by not reading any manga basically ever. I know I miss a lot, and every so often I'm like, oh, maybe I should go read the manga, and then I'm like, but I should be anime only for a little while, and then because I don't want to spoil myself, you know? Like, I really wanted to read some Spy Family. I really wanted to read some Apothecary, but I'm like, no, I don't want to spoil myself for these. Similar with solo leveling. Don't want to spoil myself. Looking forward to seeing what I've missed in previous episodes. Let's begin.
This was pretty good.
Okay.
I will admit I had my doubts, but after seeing the first episode, the pacing and the fluid animation, I think solo leveling might actually be in pretty good hands with this one. Of course, it's not panel perfect like how Frieren is, but when it comes to comparing it with the webcomic, the dark tone and gritty action is captured fairly nicely. Now, I'm sure that's something plenty of you have read already, so I'm not just going to be comparing the anime to the webcomic, but I'll also talk about how it compares to the novels too.
Cool.
The original
Love it.
publication that came out 3 years before the webcomic did.
Oh.
It's here there's plenty more lore related to the world and the hunters within, so whether you're anime only or someone who's read the manhwa, this video and the ones to follow it will talk about all solo leveling has to offer. It's a completely spoiler-free review of what the anime doesn't show us. So, if you want to see weekly videos just like this one, then consider subscribing since there'll be plenty more of them. Let's get started. It's an interesting choice to start the anime with the teaser for one of the best arcs in the entire series, but what I think this means, or at least hope this means, is that they might be planning to eventually get to it. The tease itself does highlight the core elements of solo leveling, so...
Okay, interesting, because where we're at now, where I am at least in the show, it seems like they are, I thought that that was a flashback. Okay, interesting that it's a teaser for it. I thought, this entire time, I thought it was a flashback.
As an introduction to this brand new world, it does do its purpose and familiarizes us with it. We were shown hunters and the monsters they face, as well as the immense power both sides were capable of. The threat of death was made apparent right from the get-go, and the tone of such battles were made clear as well. The thing is, this isn't the way that solo leveling actually started. It's an excerpt from the 13th arc of the webtoon. About 90 chapters deep for that, or 111 if you're reading the novel.
Wow.
Once again, I'm hoping it is to show that they do plan on making it here, but if each episode covers 4 to 5 chapters each, that would put the start of this arc right between episodes 18 and 22.
Okay, because like I will say this right now in episode 10, they're sort of it feels like they're teasing this based on what that's what it felt like to me, that they were teasing this. I thought they were like going back. I thought that's what they were talking about. Oh yeah, we're going back to that island. But so they're starting to thread that in then. All right, so I have a while to wait before we actually see this.
So it definitely is possible if the pacing continues the way it does, but at the very minimum it would have to be done through a split core season. And even then that would only bring us to the start of the arc. So, despite solo leveling being listed for 12 episodes only, I wouldn't be surprised if they announced its continuation shortly after that. Now, where solo leveling really starts is with the introduction of our world's weakest hunter, Sung. There were plans to localize his name to something like Shun Mizushino, but that's a change only present in Japan's TV version of the anime. The version we have from Crunchyroll and Aniplex is separately voiced to include the character names that we know. So, despite the website showing localized names different from the webtoon, the ones any of us overseas will be getting are the OG ones. To focus on the actual content of the story now, Sung Jin-woo is the weakest because he's pretty much just a normal human. Yes, he's an awakened hunter just like all the others, but with his strength being similar to that of an average human, and his wounds capable of healing just a bit faster, there wasn't much else to differentiate him from a non-awakened person. This would often lead to him getting injured, and more times than not it was for a pay that wasn't even worth it. Why continue being a hunter then? Well, it certainly wasn't because he liked to, but was instead because he felt he had to. Because the Hunters Association had a medical aid payout tied to their payroll, this was a massive help in funding his mother's medical bills. If it wasn't, then Sung Jin-woo would have given up his hunter's license years ago. He had no problem going and getting an ordinary job, but it's just that it wouldn't support his sickly mother the way that hunting did. I mean, he was after all a 24-year-old man with no special talents or background. Combine this with a debt of several thousand USD a month, and what you get is a person whose only choice is to be a hunter. Now, when it came to gates such as these, it was—
where I'm at in the thing too, it seems like he's getting close to maybe figuring out how to save his mom. But I feel like he's gotten to a point too where he's not going to stop hunting now.
It wasn't rare for everyone participating to know each other, since the same hunters were almost always called upon. They were the ones the Hunter Association would usually assign to this area. The number of jobs they were getting was slowly diminishing though, since the presence of guilds was making gate clearing this highly coveted commodity. You see, there were only so many gates to go around for everyone, and with each guild competing to be the ones to clear it, that meant less were available for the independent hunters tied to the Hunter Association. It had made for this interesting society in which the very act of dungeon clearing was now something people could make money off of.
Okay, cool. So like that is interesting actually, like the differentiation between the guilds and the association. Cool.
Resulting in the creation of this new highly profitable industry. So, with every gate having the potential to bring in millions, it was only natural these private guilds be the ones to try and capitalize on it.
Capitalism!
It had gotten to the point where the only gates left over for the Hunter Association were these smaller low-rank ones not even worth doing for the guilds. Luckily, this meant those gates were usually easy and safe, but what it also meant was that there wasn't a lot of profit in them. No guild typically meant not a lot of money. Sure, that also indicated the difficulty would be low too, but even that wasn't known for sure in this business. There were still numerous hunters who carried themselves with quite a bit of worry here. Such was the nature of taking a job like this. What quickly changed that mood to something better though was the arrival of Sung and the message he brought with him. You see, if the Hunter Association judged this gate to be one that Sung Jin-woo could handle, then that meant for sure that this was gonna be an easy one. Everyone who's raided with him knew that him being there meant that things were gonna be fine.
And yet they were still always really rude to him anyway. Like, they were still always quite rude. Unnecessary.
Unfortunately, that didn't really apply to him, but for everyone else who knows they're stronger than him, they could dismiss their worries since anything he could do, they could do for sure. Now, to clarify more on the example they used to show how weak he really is, the E-rank dungeon he got injured in was an anomaly many didn't even think to be possible. You see, while normally raids are almost always completed with a healer, because no one had ever gotten injured in an E-rank dungeon before, the association didn't even think that a healer was necessary. They had decided to send in his party without one.
Oh.
So, when Sung Jin-woo did inevitably get hurt, the lack of a healer meant that he would have to spend the next week in a hospital, recovering from a wound that no one else thought was even possible. That would be the first part of Sung Jin-woo's introduction, but it's before we continue into the dungeon itself that we would first get an anime original scene with the chairman and his associate. He's not someone who shows up until a little bit later, but as the acting leader of the overall Hunter Association, it makes sense to use him as an exposition tool. So,
okay, I didn't realize that was anime
as
only.
To why dungeons can be so profitable, then went on to explain the lucrative market that's formed around it. To hunters, dungeons are an easy way to make progressively more money, then to the government, the resources from said dungeons are a clean and efficient energy source. There's smaller details we don't find out till later on in the story, but I think revealing them now gives more motivation as to why certain things are the way they are in this world.
Yeah, I agree. Especially, like, certain things that happen in his, first dungeon after awakening.
It leans more into
second
the idea
awakening
that
or whatever.
dungeons aren't just something that needs to be cleared, but have instead turned into this economy-defining industry, one that's deeply rooted itself in countries across the globe. Switching back to something a bit more local is the D-rank raid that Sung Jin-woo is currently taking part in. A brief scene exclusive to the webcomic was the part where Song had asked whether he could be their leader or not. It wasn't something he declared like how we saw in the anime, but was instead a role he offered to take since he was the most experienced. I mean, with a decade spent raiding and a high rank of C, it was only natural that he be the one to lead everyone. In fact,
I
if
really
not
like
for the
him.
fact that he was over 60 years old, Song's skills as a mage would have landed him a comfy spot in just about any guild. He was a competent hunter everyone present knew that they could count on. Now, I know I mentioned how most of these hunters already knew each other, but there's a different reason why Sung Jin-woo and Lee Ji-hee are so familiar with each other. Normally the two wouldn't have ever interacted, but with her being essential and him, well, not. Their paths were fated to cross more times than you would think. What I mean is that with Joo-hee being the essential healer that she is, it was only natural she be present at every raid Sung Jin-woo was at.
Except
Since
for
healing was the rarest type of magic out of all of them, the Hunter Association had no choice but to ask a B rank.
I had no idea. Like, that's, again, this is why it's cool for him, because he just kind of throws these things out of there. Healing is the most rare kind. Cool. Awesome. Like, that's why I like these videos. I learned so much.
Like her to be present at every gate that opened up. Not the ones that the guilds were doing, but any left behind for the Hunter Association was one that Lee Ji-hee would be asked to be healer for. So, with Sung Jin-woo getting injured at every gate, what started out as a freak accident quickly turned into a recurring incident that made Joo-hee question whether he was even supposed to be there. There were about 8 separate instances in which Sung Jin-woo would have to be healed by her. By then, he was no longer at the point of being grateful for her saving him, but was instead now just feeling bad for always inconveniencing her. It was a burden on her that he truly felt apologetic for. This would lead Joo-hee to ask why it is he doesn't just give up, but since revealing personal details wasn't something he wanted to share now, Sung simply said it was to keep himself from dying of boredom. His excuse was that being a hunter was all just a hobby to him. Of course, such an excuse
no, that would just make her mad, especially if because he does feel bad about it. He was so nice at the beginning.
Didn't really fly with Joo-hee, but with nothing more to say, the most he could do was just chuckle at her. Now, to quantify just how much money certain essence stones are worth, the E-rank ones are somewhere around $80, while the C-rank ones would sell for more like $8,000. Obviously, the low-rank stones aren't enough to make a livable wage off of, but with the higher ranks bringing in thousands of dollars each, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you just how much profit there could be in something like a C or B rank.
That's crazy.
It's actually a small little calculation that we did on my stream the other day, twitch.tv/anynews_. We talk more about solo leveling every Sunday. But back to the story. It was shortly after that the extremely rare double dungeon was found. An occurrence so incredibly scarce that even with Mr. Song's 10 years of experience, never once had he ever come across one. There was no doubt that this was what it was though, since despite killing the boss that they thought was the boss, the gate still didn't show any signs of closing. It was a positive indicator that the real boss was still somewhere beyond this hidden passageway. The decision of choosing to explore it was quite the tough one, since even though the dungeon was easy up until this point, and even though it should technically remain easy all the way till the end, there was no guarantee that any of this would be easy. There were no guarantees when raiding a dungeon at all, and when it came to things like this, it really all depended on how much risk everyone was willing to take. So, with a total of 17 hunters present, the votes were cast and a decision made.
That's a lot. The
potential riches awaiting them was worth the risk of whatever threats that they may come across.
I don't think I realized quite how many people were in that particular dungeon at that time. Like, just because like I only remember the ones who came back or who were fated to die because they talked about their children and stuff.
The passage turned out to be even longer than expected though, since even after 40 minutes of walking, nothing seemed to indicate that they were getting anywhere. If the path had continued for 20 minutes more, then the group would have had no choice but to turn back and leave.
Yeah, because the
reason being that after a boss is defeated and dungeon cleared, the hunters within only have 1 hour to escape it.
So like honestly, 40 minutes, 45 is maybe the most, like I wouldn't even necessarily want to go 40 minutes deep, honestly, because like what if somebody does get hurt and can't go that fast? You know, like they can't walk at the same speed, or if they're tired, they can't walk at the same speed. What happens if it closes while you're still in there? Maybe he'll tell me.
If they don't, then the gate will close and they'd be trapped forever.
Just trapped?
So,
okay.
If walking to the boss...
Well, okay. So are they trapped, or do they like go back to whatever dimension the the dungeons are kind of stemming from?
Room was to take 1 hour or more, then the risk of getting trapped inside would be exponentially greater. Sure, they could run and make it back in less than an hour, but
get a dirt bike.
Also being needed to scavenge and gather loot, they would definitely be cutting it close and risk getting trapped forever.
Someone should bring a moped
It's when the door finally showed up that the peculiarity of such an entrance really did make everyone nervous, like it was some sort of Dark Souls fog gate. I mean, it was clear the doors were intimidating to everyone, and the odd nature of its presence definitely instilled doubt. Song could tell that this was the case, so before they could let their uncertainties get the best of them, he quickly flipped the conversation by exploiting a few key logical fallacies. Not only did he use his position of power to instill fake confidence, but he also applied guilt by saying he would continue alone if he had to. So,
Oh.
by being this elder veteran and saying he would enter regardless, he had simultaneously eased all the anxiety everyone was feeling, as well as coerced them into thinking they would be losing out if they didn't go.
Yeah.
He had essentially single-handedly
Huh.
persuaded the group into walking towards their doom. Of course, the thought of becoming rich didn't help either, but
So that
was
guilt's
more so hearsay
gonna-
from rumors.
Not gonna
Sure,
go away
everyone
fast
says
for
There's
him.
incredible treasures hidden within double dungeons, but the only real story was the small guild who apparently grew massive from one. They had supposedly found a double dungeon and used the profits from it to grow exponentially practically overnight.
Was that him?
So, with that
Didn't
being
realize
what
that.
everyone was potentially walking away from, no one wanted to let Song get all the treasure for himself. Reason being that the way treasure worked when it came to raids was that, unlike essence stones which were procured individually, treasure was divided equally among everyone. What that meant was that even if Sung Jin-woo didn't do any fighting, by just being there at the end he would get an equal cut of any treasure that was
Okay.
found.
See, that's like a tip pool, you know? And sometimes that's fine, and sometimes that's annoying, because it's like if you're person who's if you're trying to deal with a person who's not pulling their weight with the tip pool and you still have to share everything equally, it is very frustrating. It's like, but you didn't do anything.
The rest was mental gymnastics going towards how the monsters should be just as easy as the earlier ones, and that was that for choosing whether to enter or not. Now, I'm sure you don't need me to tell you just how massive the room they entered was, but to give you a true idea of its actual scale, it was about the size of 4 Olympic stadiums combined together.
Whoa.
That's 320,000 square meters of open space.
Wow,
or a
I
giant
did not
boss room
realize
with a
that. That's
diameter of 2
crazy.
kilometers. The main statue was bigger than the Statue of Liberty, so in anime terms that's even taller than the Colossal Titan. All in all, it was
Wow.
a truly grand space that no one could have even imagined. Now, I won't jump into the events of the disaster just yet, but
That's
what I
the
will
next
mention
episode.
before ending this video is the runic inscription Song had translated for everyone. These aren't words that can be found anywhere on Earth, but are instead a unique language solely
Oh,
discovered
cool.
in dungeons. They're also not words any normal human can decipher, since only hunters capable of magic can read them.
Oh, interesting.
What I mean is that only the hunters who awakened to magic-related professions are capable of understanding the runic alphabet these words are written
Oh, that's
in.
so cool.
So, with that leading us towards the big cliffhanger, I think we can end things off here and pick things up next week.
Cool. All
You
right.
can be sure to find another solo leveling video right here on Monday or Tuesday. If you want to know exactly when, then be sure to subscribe with notifications turned on. But yeah, what did you guys think of the episode? I'm curious to hear the opinions of anime-onlys as well as those who've read the manhwa too. So, whether you liked it or not, or whether you're someone who's read it, let me know down in the comments. Now, before I go, a huge thanks to those who are members of the channel. Any and all support is always
yes.
appreciated, so I just want to shout out those who support directly.
Cool.
But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do.
Indeed.
So, until next time, ciao!
Ciao. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, I feel like I actually did kind of pick up a lot, and some stuff. I think I have, some things people have explained to me a little bit more in various comments over on Patreon, and other things I think I've put together from context clues. But see, this is why I like this kind of thing. This is why I like Annie News videos a lot. They explain things very well, and I'm able to either get just like tiny little bits of background information, like the fact that the healing is the most rare. Didn't know that. And it's cool to get like other extra little insights into various characters, especially side characters, and like, what they're going through and what they're dealing with. And I just think it's so fun. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. There's, as of posting this on Patreon, there are 2 episodes left, I think, for Solo Leveling Season 1 for me. So that's where I'm at. So I will see you in the next one. Bye!